My name is Harper Whitman. I was born and raised in a family that cared more about its reputation than any of its children. My family owns Whitman & Co., a luxury home design and construction firm based in Charleston, South Carolina, that's been around for over 50 years. Everyone in the industry knows the name. What they don't know is that the "and Co." never included me. I'm the youngest and the only daughter. My eldest brother, Mason, is 42. He was the high school football star, now the so-called CEO of the company. The middle one, Caleb, 38, half finished an economics degree before being handed the title of head of project development, though no one really knows what he actually develops. And me, Harper, 34, with an MBA from NYU, but in my family's eyes, I've always been the girl who colors and makes PowerPoint slides. As a kid, I followed my father to job sites, breathing in drywall dust instead of the smell of cookies. I still remember every model home corner, every white shingle beachfront estate I once dreamed of designing myself. But while my brothers sat in board meetings by age 25, I was still being asked to make coffee and fix slide margins. "Harper, I know you're capable," my mother once told me. Then she went silent when I was called the difficult sister for suggesting we modernize our smart home line. I never asked for special treatment. I did everything by the book. Summer internships with no pay, sleepless nights refining our 5-year financial plan, even quietly saving the company from a disastrous contract. None of it ever mattered. I remember the meeting when I was 31. I had spent 3 weeks preparing to pitch a market expansion into the Pacific Northwest, where sustainable housing demand was rising fast. My plan covered every number, every demographic trend, every projection. I wore my favorite charcoal blazer, launched the slide deck, and began to speak. I wasn't even 3 minutes in when my father, Walter Whitman, cut me off with a voice sharp enough to slice glass. "Harper, that's enough. You're not the right person to talk about succession. Don't confuse being a good presenter with being a leader." I froze. The room fell silent except for Caleb's scoff and Mason checking his watch. "You have a lot of ideas," my father continued, "but that doesn't make you a leader. We don't need dreamers. We need grit." I wanted to ask, since when is accurate data analysis considered dreaming? But I said nothing. I knew no amount of logic could crack the concrete wall of their 30-year-old assumptions about me. That night, I sat alone in my office, the one with my name on the door only because I had printed and taped it myself, asking, how many times do I have to prove myself before they see me? The answer, never. Because I wasn't Mason, I wasn't Caleb, I wasn't a man. To them, I was just Harper, the girl with big ideas but no place at the table. I knew at the moment my father turned to leave and said one last thing. "If you really want to lead, Harper, build something of your own. Don't expect a seat at a table built by men who earned it with their bare hands." I smiled. I wouldn't ask again. I'd build my own table, and I'd make it so big, one day they'd be the ones asking for a seat. I didn't say a word to anyone when I left the company. No goodbyes, no farewell emails. I just packed up my laptop, tore down the nameplate on my office door, and walked straight out to the parking lot under the blazing golden afternoon sun. I still remember the sound of the glass door clicking shut behind me. No one followed. 3 days later, I left Charleston. I sold my new SUV, paid off my downtown apartment lease early, and booked a one-way ticket to Denver, a city I'd never lived in, but always felt I belonged to. I needed a place where no one knew my name. A place where I wasn't Harper from the Whitmans. A place where I could start over without asking for permission. I rented a second-floor apartment above a used bookstore. It was so narrow I had to squeeze past the table just to open the fridge, but I'd never felt freer. Every morning, the soft jingle of wind chimes from downstairs reminded me I was living life on my own terms. I started sketching again, reviving my idea of smart homes that focused on energy efficiency and minimalist design, but with a deep sense of comfort and flow. Nothing flashy, not the kind of homes the Charleston elite love to flaunt. I was designing for people who actually needed them. Young couples, older singles, single parent families, people like me. I named the company Hartwell Living, a name that felt both soft and strong, just like what I wanted to build. Not just houses, but places where people could breathe freely. No capital, no team, no client list. I started with a self-made website, a borrowed phone, and a social media account with just 3 followers. 2 of them were college friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I visited every new neighborhood around Denver, left business cards, knocked on the doors of tiny architecture firms, and emailed real estate offices I found on Google. Most never replied. A few said, "Leave your materials, we'll call if needed." Of course, no one called. That first month, I survived on cold sandwiches, learned to brew cheap coffee without flinching. At night, I sat in my living room, floor covered in sketches and draft contracts, printing each proposal on a wheezing secondhand printer. Then one day in mid-February, I got an email from a local developer, Mr. Grant Holloway, looking for a design partner for a small eco-friendly housing project in Boulder. We received 20 proposals. Yours was the only one that talked about how the residents would feel, not just the profit, he wrote. We met at a plain little coffee shop. I presented my Modleaf model, a modular home built from recycled materials using smart lighting sensors that adjusted energy use by season. Mr. Holloway didn't say much at first, just asked, "You did this all on your own?" I nodded. 2 days later, I got the confirmation email. Hartwell Living had been selected. I don't believe in luck. I believe in timing and being ready when the door cracks open. I threw myself into the project like someone who needed air. I drew plans, negotiated materials, walked each lot, and supervised construction crews directly, all with a rented pickup truck and no staff. I even took the marketing photos, built the slide decks, and modeled the 3D renders using expired demo software. The project finished 6 months later, just 3 homes. But the local paper wrote about it as the first development in the region to run 100% on solar energy, paired with passive, seasonal lighting design. The following week, I got 4 more calls, all from small but serious investors. One said they saw the article. One said, "My sister's friend in Boulder told me about you." One simply said, "I need someone who isn't building like the old firms." I made no promises. I just said, I don't build houses. I build spaces where people can breathe in rhythm with their lives. 3 months later, I hired my first employee, Leanna, a young Mexican architect fresh out of school, rejected from several places for lacking US experience. I didn't care. I wanted people who had been dismissed, pushed aside, because they would understand why we had to do everything differently. Hartwell Living grew, quietly, steadily, like roots gripping deep into the earth. My family still didn't know what I was doing or where I lived. As far as they were concerned, I was probably still wandering around, looking for a more suitable job for a girl. Fine. They didn't need to see it. Not yet. I didn't post anything online. Didn't tell a single relative. On paper, Hartwell Living was a privately owned LLC, operating out of a converted grain warehouse. No flashy logo, no signage by the street, just a pale gray door where everything quietly began. I knew one thing. If my father, Walter Whitman, or either of my brothers found out I was still in the industry, they wouldn't let it slide. Not because they cared, but because they couldn't stand the thought of me existing outside their control. Whitman and Co. still dominated the East Coast luxury housing market, but I knew their blind spot. They didn't understand women, and they definitely didn't understand modern buyers. To them, a house was a trophy, not a place to live. Their ideal client, a 60-year-old man cashing out stocks to build his third estate. Meanwhile, I paid attention to people like Nora, a single mom with 2 kids who wanted an energy-efficient home that was easy to manage, or a young couple from Austin who moved to Denver for remote work. I targeted the clients Whitman & Co. overlooked: independent women, non-traditional couples, up-and-coming families who needed homes that matched a tech-savvy, eco-conscious lifestyle. The kind of people big firms used to dismiss with a line like, maybe one day when you can afford it, you can dream about these designs. I didn't sell dreams, I built reality. Every small Hartwell project was designed with the client as the center. We asked them when they slept, how long they cooked, which room they worked in, whether they had pets, if they preferred warm or cool light. Every detail was adjusted to serve real life, not magazine spreads. After the Boulder project, I quietly reached out to smaller investors who'd once been turned away by Whitman and Co. One of them was Kenneth Adams, who had pitched a low-energy housing community in Colorado Springs. Rejected by Mason for being too niche and not profitable enough. I showed up to our meeting with just a full-color 3D model. No fancy pitch deck, no showy renderings, just one line. I don't need you to believe in me. I need you to let me prove it. 3 weeks later, Hartwell won the bid. The media called it a modern neighborhood that doesn't pretend to be something it's not. One industry investor even said, Hartwell builds for real people, not just for glossy magazines. That's rare. I started hiring, but not through LinkedIn. I reached back to those Whitman and Co. had ignored or pushed out. Yasmin Rowe, a former project manager, was removed from Caleb's team because women can't handle construction crews. Tommy Ellison, a young designer who proposed a curved roof design to deflect sunlight, was mocked for ruining the classical aesthetic. Maya LeBlanc, a customer care rep of color, was pulled from a VIP meeting because she didn't fit the brand image. I didn't just offer them salaries, I gave them authority. I said, this is a place where every idea gets tested, if it solves a real problem. Each of them came in carrying silent disappointment. But I saw them because I'd been invisible to. 3/4 in, Hartwell had 11 people. We worked in a space with tall windows, raw wood tables, and a bulletin board full of employee pet photos. No dress code, no leather CEO chair, but one thing was always present: respect. We weren't big, but we were quiet enough to stay agile, determined enough to make an impact, and, most importantly, small enough that they still hadn't noticed we were right behind them. What surprised me most, former Whitman and Co. clients started calling. No one asked where I'd been. They just said, we want something different. They didn't know the person behind the blueprint they held was Harper, the girl they once forced out of the boardroom. But one day, they'll find out, and when they do, I won't need to say a word. 18 months after I set foot in Denver, Hartwell Living was no longer an unfamiliar name. We had just officially outbid Whitman and Co. on 3 major contracts. Not small projects, but the kind my family used to call untouchable. The first was the Summit Park Townhomes in Fort Collins, a row housing development with integrated solar power and intelligent temperature regulation. Whitman had a draft agreement in place, but the deal stalled due to budget adjustments. I submitted our proposal last. No flashy brochures, just practical models, efficiency breakdowns, and a short video showing our previous residents watering their gardens with a rainwater collection system. We won the bid. Not a single article mentioned the name Harper Whitman. The second was the West Creek Learning Center, a community education hub for low-income children in the suburbs. I knew Whitman would scoff at it. Low profit, no press value. I didn't. I met with the district board in person, brought models of open classrooms, eco-friendly materials, and a design that blended library space with creative play zones. A week later, Hartwell Living was officially selected. The third project, Golden Pines Wellness Retreat, was one I never expected to win. It was a luxury mountain resort in Montana, where Whitman had already completed 2 past phases. But this time, the client brought in a new leadership team. I submitted under our partner firm. Leanna served as the front face. I stayed behind the scenes on technical work. We reimagined the entire concept, ditched the gold-plated pools, replaced them with open-air meditation decks, flooded with mountain air and morning light. No marble countertops, just locally sourced, thermally treated, sound-insulated wood. At the end of the presentation, the client's rep asked one question. Who came up with this concept? Liana smiled. Someone who was once told she was too emotional to lead? 3 weeks later, Whitman and Co. lost the contract they thought was already in the bag. Whether they suspected anything, I don't know. What I do know, they had no idea it was me. Every deal was signed under Hartwell's name. I never appeared in person. I remained a shadow, an unrecognized name, yet moving steadily forward. And while we were busy growing the team, on the other side, my family started unraveling. News broke that Whitman and Co. was being investigated for delayed government contracts in Savannah. An old school renovation project was suspended pending review. My father declined to comment. And Caleb posted a video blaming post-pandemic logistical pressures and supply chain stress. A week later, layoffs began. First, the communications staff, then an entire group of architects I once worked with. A few reached out to me, cautious, not daring to mention the company name. I replied simply, "If you were underestimated there, here you'll be given a real shot." And they came, one by one, people who understood what it meant to be called a backup for life. I didn't have to train them. They already knew what to do, and they did it better than anyone I'd ever worked with. Meanwhile, media outlets started asking questions. No one knew exactly who Hartwell Living was. We didn't sponsor events, we didn't speak at panels, we didn't run TV ads, yet we kept winning bids. Headlines started using phrases like the silent force reshaping the construction market and the stealth company disrupting old money. And me, still quiet, still unseen. I read each article like watching a play I'd directed from behind the curtain. No one in my family knew I was still in the industry. They thought I'd quit after being humiliated in that boardroom. Fine. The longer they didn't know, the less they could fight back. You can't compete with a rival you can't see. That was the point. I didn't need fame. I needed results. And the results were there on every headline, in every figure, in every contract. They lost. One morning, I came across a message circulating among senior architects in the industry. Watch out for Hartwell. They don't make noise, but they miss nothing. I smiled. No one needed to know I was Harper Whitman. They only needed to know one thing. I'm back. I always thought I'd be the one to choose the moment. That if the name Harper Whitman ever reemerged, it would be because I chose to lift the veil. But life doesn't ask for your permission. That morning, I was at the office. We had already moved into a sleek 3-story glass building just outside Denver, now the headquarters of Hartwell Living, when Liana rushed in, face pale like she'd witnessed a car crash. You need to see this, right now. I hadn't even closed my laptop when she set her phone down in front of me. A Forbes online headline, bold and unflinching, stared back at me. The woman behind Hartwell Living, revealed as Harper Whitman, daughter of Whitman and Co. Empire. I froze. A chill ran down my spine. No portrait photo, but there it was. A shot of me smiling naturally, unguarded, standing beside my team at a recent housing launch. I scrolled down. The article was a full profile. My academic background, my disappearance from Whitman after the infamous boardroom meeting, the creation of Hartwell, the 3 major contracts that knocked out the family firm, and my full name unblurred, Harper Evelyn Whitman, founder and CEO of Hartwell Living. No one at my company knew I carried the Whitman name. Liana stared at me, speechless. I exhaled, picked up my phone, and checked my inbox. It had exploded like a beehive struck at high noon. CNN, Business Insider, Architectural Digest, The Atlantic, all sending interview requests, congratulations, and a flood of questions. Why did you hide your identity? What does your family think of your success? Is Hartwell poised to become the next national firm? I didn't respond, not because I was afraid, but because I was too busy imagining my father's face when he read that article. Less than 2 hours later, I received my first message from any family member since leaving Charleston. From my mother, just one line. Your father has been sitting in his study all morning. No one dares go in. I read it over and over like some kind of prophecy. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel pain, just a strange stillness expanding in my chest. The moment I once imagined would erupt like fireworks turned out to be quiet, like a cold breeze sneaking through your shirt. I remembered so clearly the last time I saw him, standing before me, firm and certain, saying, "You're not leadership material, you're a dreamer, a sensitive girl." And now, I was the youngest female CEO in the US within the residential design and construction industry, an industry long ruled by gray-suited men. That night I didn't sleep. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The article had been shared over 130,000 times in just 6 hours. My name trended on Google across the Western region. The media called me the ghost CEO, the anonymous woman quietly redefining the future of construction. I opened my laptop and checked Hartwell's website. In just 12 hours, our partnership inquiries had increased 20-fold. A San Francisco-based fund offered a $15 million 0 cents investment at triple our previous valuation. The entire world was pivoting around me, while the people who once labeled me the outsider could do nothing but watch in silence. Close to midnight, my phone rang. No name on the screen, but I knew who it was. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Harper?" That voice. Dry, unsteady. I didn't answer. "You, you did all this? Why?" I swallowed. My voice was unnervingly calm. "I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because you once said I wasn't capable. I just wanted to prove you wrong." Silence. "The company's struggling. Mason and Caleb, they've lost control. If you came back..." I cut him off with a quiet breath. "I'm not coming back. Not to save them. And not to prove anything anymore. I've built a world where I don't need permission to exist." I hung up. No trembling, no regret, just release. From that moment forward, I knew I'd never have to look back again. No longer Harper, the girl who doesn't understand the real world. I was Harper Whitman, and this time, the entire country knew my name. The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon, sealed in a cream-colored envelope with an embossed wax stamp, just like every year before. Whitman Family Annual Gathering. Location: the main estate in Charleston. Time: Saturday, 4 p.m. Dress code: formal. No personal note, no sender's name, as if the last 4 years had never happened. I turned the card over in silence. There was a time when I dreamed of receiving something like this, back when I sat in the farthest corner during family meetings, treated like an unnamed extra. Now the invitation had come, but it meant nothing to a woman who no longer needed acceptance. Still, I decided to go. Not for them, for me. That Saturday afternoon, I arrived in Charleston in a pearl-silver Rolls-Royce Ghost, pulling up silently at the front gate of the estate I once called home, the same place where every step I took used to be scrutinized. The gate opened automatically when the guard recognized me. He flinched slightly, but nodded. I caught a glimpse of myself reflected in the window. Hair in a sleek bun, an ivory suit tailored to perfection, beige heels with a soft gloss, no flashy labels, just absolute precision. The driveway was packed with luxury cars, Bentleys, Range Rovers, a few familiar Porsches from distant relatives, but none drew stares the way mine did. But I stepped out, no one came to greet me. That was fine. I'd never needed introductions. I walked straight into the foyer where the sounds of clinking glasses, cheerful laughter, and vintage Chanel perfume floated through the air. Then suddenly, the room paused. A silence rippled through like an invisible wave. One by one, they turned to look. Aunts, uncles, distant cousins, the ones who used to call me that nice girl, just a little odd. Their eyes met mine, then quickly darted away as if afraid to see something they weren't ready to face. My cousin Jessica, the one who hadn't made eye contact with me that entire Christmas party, whispered something to the woman beside her, eyes fixed on the car key in my hand. I smiled gently. No nods, no polite greetings. I was done playing pleasant Harper. My father stood at the large window overlooking the back garden, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand. He wore a dark gray suit, the same gold watch from years ago still on his wrist, but his shoulders, they had dropped, as if the weight of failure was slowly draining the arrogance from his frame. I approached him slowly. My heels struck the ebony wood floor with sharp clarity, each step announcing, "I'm back." He turned. For a fleeting moment, I saw confusion in his eyes, not because he didn't recognize me, but because he didn't know where to begin. "Harper." His voice was low, hoarse, no longer the commanding baritone of the past. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, standing exactly 3 steps away. "Whether hard is to believe. Amen?" "Nora," he cleared his throat. "I read all of it." Silence. "I may have misjudged you, maybe." Just one maybe, short, but for him, it was a crack in the armor. "You've done more than we ever imagined. You really built something remarkable." He paused, struggling for words. Then finally, "Whitman and Co. is in trouble. Mason's lost control. Caleb, too. We need you." I gave a soft smile. Not mocking, just calm. "You don't need me. You need someone to save the company, but I didn't come to save anyone." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand, stopping him. "I came to close a chapter, to show myself that I'm no longer that girl who once stood outside the boardroom, trembling, begging to be heard." I stepped closer, close enough for him to smell the subtle woodsy note of my perfume, the one I chose not to impress, but to declare, "I am here, I exist, and I choose my own pace. I don't need the Whitman name anymore. I've already carved mine onto the map of this industry." I turned and walked away without looking back. Behind me, the room fell into silence. No more clinking glasses, no more hushed whispers, just the sound of my footsteps echoing across the grand hall, like the closing note of a dying legacy. Outside, the Rolls gleamed under the late afternoon sun. I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and looked at the house one final time. Not out of longing, but to say goodbye to the woman I used to be, the one who waited to be called. Now she walks in, and the world knows her name. I drove away from the Whitman estate just as the sky turned a deep amber, the late sun scattering across the windshield like shards of broken glass. It was a beautiful scene, but not enough to make me look back. Behind me were 30 years of longing to be acknowledged, now closed. No more judgmental stares from Caleb. No more half-consenting, half-sympathetic remarks from my father. No more whispers from relatives who never called me by my name, only that girl or her. I used to think that to claim a place, I had to walk into that house as a rightful heir. But it turns out power isn't something you're given. It's something you build without asking. And I had built it. 4 years ago, I left with a suitcase, a forgotten name, and a sentence hanging in my head: "You don't have what it takes." 4 years later, I returned, not to prove them wrong, but to prove I was right to choose myself. The Rolls glided through the familiar streets of Charleston, a place that had once been my roots, but never my soil. I no longer felt bitter, only calm. Like the storm had passed and everything was finally clear. A few days after the reunion, my interview aired on CBS Evening News during prime time. The host opened with footage of the Golden Pines retreat, panning from solar-paneled roofs to meditation rooms built entirely from recycled materials. When the camera turned to me, I wore an ivory linen shirt and a soft blue blazer. No logos, no flashy brands. I didn't need those anymore to show who I was. "Harper Whitman, what made you choose to stay anonymous for so long?" "Because I wanted to see if I could build something without anyone knowing whose daughter I was. And now that everyone knows, I don't need it anymore." The host chuckled. I didn't, because to me this wasn't a victory lap. It was a confirmation. That real success isn't your parents' approval, but living by your own values, no matter what they once believed. The next day, Architectural Weekly ran a headline across their homepage: Harper Whitman, the woman redefining luxury through sustainability and empathy. That same day, I received a letter from the National Design Council. I had been named Breakthrough Entrepreneur of the Year. For the first time in the industry's history, the title went to someone who declined all media sponsorship. But to me, the greatest award was the people living in Hartwell homes. Single mothers with automated thermal systems that help their kids sleep warmly through winter. Older couples who no longer need stairs thanks to adjustable floor levels. Immigrant families who feel welcomed by homes designed for them, not ones they're forced to adapt to. Wherever I go, people recognize me. Not because I'm Walter Whitman's daughter, but because I'm Harper, the one who dared to say that true luxury doesn't boast, it listens. I was once the girl shut out of boardrooms, the shadow behind two brothers. But now I lead, not my old family, but an entire generation of young architects who are being taught that intuition, compassion, and precision are not weaknesses. They're the strength of real leadership. The name Harper Whitman, once forgotten in the margins of a family tree, now stands on its own, not beneath anyone, and not casting anyone else's shadow. And the most beautiful part, I no longer have to knock to be seen. I built the door myself. And this time, the world heard me coming. Harper's story is proof that success doesn't require the approval of those who once underestimated you. In a world still shaped by bias and favoritism, she chose to build her own path, not for revenge, but to assert her worth with quiet strength and lasting purpose. Sometimes silence speaks louder than confrontation, and living true to yourself is the most powerful victory of all. Harper didn't just reclaim her place. She inspired everyone who's ever been dismissed to believe this: you can rewrite your own destiny. What do you think about Harper's journey? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about life and family.